My name is Marcus.
I'm 28 years old, and a Hawkeye belonging to the 10th Division of the National Security Bureau. The 10th Division does not refer to its order, but rather holds a profound meaning. Under visibility, a Hawkeye can spot a rabbit on the ground from 10 kilometers away. The profession of Hawkeye may be little known, but its opponent spy is a term familiar to everyone. To put it simply, if spies are cunning rats, then Hawkeyes are soaring eagles. Spies are masters of disguise, while Hawkeyes excel at identification. Finding the different among the same and discovering the same within the different, thereby assisting national security departments in bringing spies to justice. The reason why Hawkeyes are both mysterious and scarce is due to the extremely demanding selection criteria. A Hawkeye must possess extraordinary powers of observation, memory recognition, and resistance to interference. For instance, during Hawkeye selection, the examiner once asked us to read a book within an hour and then recount its contents. I finished reading it in half an hour, closed my eyes, and recited the entire book verbatim. The moment I closed my eyes, the entire content of the book surfaced vividly in my mind, as if automatically turning its pages. This is not a boast, but an essential requirement for being a Hawkeye: super memory. Otherwise, one would be ruthlessly eliminated. A Hawkeye's ability to recognize faces is equally crucial. The opposite concept is prosopagnosia, commonly known as face blindness. Face blindness refers to a person's low ability to recognize faces. Even if two people have only one similarity, those with prosopagnosia may misidentify them or group them together. The same person with different styles of clothing, hairstyle, or makeup can become a stranger in the eyes of someone with face blindness. Statistically, over 100 million people worldwide live their entire lives unable to remember a single face. In reality, most people experience varying degrees of face blindness. Hawkeyes, however, are the complete opposite. As long as we've seen a person once, regardless of how they disguise themselves, even if their own parents fail to recognize them, a Hawkeye can see through their disguise with a single glance. Even with identical twins, Hawkeyes can easily distinguish their subtle differences. As for how it's done, I can't explain it. It's an instinct as natural as eating and sleeping. Some might ask, with today's advanced technology and highly developed facial recognition software, what need is there for Hawkeyes? Firstly, such software has only emerged in recent years, and before that, Hawkeyes played an irreplaceable role. Secondly, using software analysis requires capturing the most recent photos of the target, not to mention the difficulty of obtaining such images. Just comparing the photos with the database alone consumes a significant amount of time. However, during missions, time is of the essence. If the analysis results are delayed, the target would have long escaped. Therefore, a combination of human and machine, a two-pronged approach, is the optimal choice. Lastly, in certain special circumstances, carrying a computer for analysis is simply impossible. In conclusion, Hawkeyes remain an indispensable force within the 10th Division to this day. In the first few years of my service, besides apprehending spies, adept at disguise, I occasionally participated in operations to capture drug lords, but typically, I only needed to be stationed in the monitoring room, with no need for frontline combat. As the sole Hawkeye recruited in nearly 2 decades, I initially drew a lot of attention within the 10th Division. I quickly understood the disbelief in their astonished gazes, and this was precisely the effect I desired. Because with just a glance, I identified the spy, they had been pursuing for years. They asked me how I managed it, and I replied from the years. No matter how he disguises himself, it's difficult to alter the characteristics of his ears. A colleague then asked, what if his ears were covered? She did follow the victims. I said, then look at the eyes. He can change everything, but he can't change his eyeballs. Even with colored contact lenses, he can't alter his gaze. What if even his eyes can't be seen? I confidently replied, then by intuition. Young and arrogant, back then, I naively believed there were no puzzles I couldn't solve. However, in my 5th year of service, I encountered an unforgettable challenge. Due to underestimating the enemy, I nearly ruined the reputation of Hawkeyes. At the time, my master, the previous Hawkeye of the 10th Division, were still around. It was a bitterly cold winter day. A fax arrived from the National Security Department stating they were pursuing an exceptionally cunning and highly skilled master spy, requesting the 10th Division to dispatch a Hawkeye for support. Typically, missions of this level were handled by my master, but unfortunately he was ill at the time. Thus the director said to me, Marcus, this mission is yours. If any problems arise, consult your master at any time. I agreed verbally, but dismissed it inwardly, believing that with me on the case, I could definitely bring this old fox to justice without needing my master to worry. Upon arriving at the National Security Department, Captain Lewis, the person in charge of this capture operation, immediately handed me the files. This individual is extremely cunning. We've lost track of him multiple times. Even our most capable investigators are at their wits' end. Agent Marcus, you must help us apprehend him this time. The only comrade who has met him face to face remains unconscious, lying in the intensive care unit. We suspect he employed some special means, as everyone who has seen him can no longer recall his appearance. Chief Detective Allen hadn't helped but add. Several other team members chimed in, their voices filled with indignation. Spies come in various forms. One type engages in long-term lurking, concealing themselves under various identities, like the former CCTV host, Chen Lei. They usually exploit their positions to steal intelligence. Another type is specialized operatives, who carry out specific tasks. The term operative, I believe, is not unfamiliar to you all, having appeared in numerous films and television shows. In fact, the term operative itself is neutral, referring to individuals who execute special tasks without inherent praise or criticism. Every country has operatives. Every country has operatives. They usually undergo rigorous selection and training, representing the elite of the elite. This type of spy often operates under false identities, withdrawing immediately after completing their mission, never staying in the target country for long. The third type of spy combines the characteristics of the first two. They have both fixed daily routines and periodically venture out to execute missions, possessing extremely high levels of concealment, making them the most challenging to deal with. So you're saying you still haven't obtained a photo of him? I inquired. The entire investigation team fell silent. Only Chief Detective Allen spoke up, mentioning eyewitnesses, team members who had seen his disguised appearance, but hadn't paid much attention at the time, only recalling it after the incident. This spy could always disguise himself as the most easily overlooked person, quite eerie. The only video footage available was from the bus surveillance. but the distance was considerable, resulting in low clarity. It was there that Detective Jack, who was tailing him, was attacked and remained comatose ever since. Alan switched on the large screen, playing the surveillance footage from that time. It was during rush hour. The bus was incredibly crowded. There were 3 individuals who had physical contact with Jack. One was an elementary school student, around 4th or 5th grade. One was an elderly person who appeared to be in their 80s, and the last one was an auntie carrying a shopping basket, her groceries spilled, and Jack kindly helped her pick them up. Alan explained from the side. Wait. Rewind. Was there any injury on Jack? I asked Alan. No, we didn't find any wounds on him. He's just unconscious. I suggest conducting a full body examination on Jack immediately using a high magnifying glass. Don't miss a single inch of his skin. A chilling thought flashed through my mind. If my speculation was correct, then the danger posed by this spy was on par with that of a top assassin. Quick, do as Agent Marcus instructed. Captain Lewis immediately issued the order. Agent Marcus, did you discover something? Evan inquired in a low voice. It's not certain yet. I can only confirm my suspicion after the examination results are out. A rule in our line of work: never jump to conclusions. Agent Marcus, why do you think we can't remember his appearance? Did he use hypnosis on us? Alan asked, scratching his head. Captain Lewis also looked at me with anticipation. I smiled and said, You said he's a senior spy, an ace spy at that. He must have something extraordinary about him. When you joined the National Security Department, didn't you participate in the Special Agent Selection Exam? They shook their heads. That's right. The annual Special Agent Selection is semi-public, adopting a recommendation and selection system. Let me briefly share my experience from when I took the Special Agent Selection Exam. Just one criterion, and you'll understand. This criterion is you cannot have any prominent features. You cannot let people easily remember you. Being too handsome is not allowed. Being too ugly is not allowed. Being too short is not allowed. Having moles or birthmarks on your body is not allowed. Having too strong an aura is not allowed. Having too weak an aura is not allowed either. In short, you have to have an average face, blending into a crowd inconspicuously, making people forget you after a single glance, leaving no memorable points. The spy you described should be someone who has passed this gold standard screening, an ideal spy. Such individuals are extremely rare, hard to come by. Moreover, he even applied makeup, making him even harder to recognize. It's normal that you can't remember him. Then we're screwed. Alan couldn't help but curse his brows, furrowed his face, etched with worry. Captain Lewis took out a pack of cigarettes and handed them out. Soon the meeting room was filled with smoke, the atmosphere heavy with gloom. I often said, Isn't there still me? Next time we carry out a mission, bring me along. I guarantee I'll fish him out. Ah, the arrogance of youth. 4 hours later, news came from the intensive care unit that they had discovered a needle mark on the back of Detective Jack's left calf, as thin as a strand of hair, about the size of a paw. Without a high magnifying glass, it would have been impossible to detect. The attending physician extracted a small amount of fluid from the needle mark and sent it to the laboratory for analysis. Captain Lewis excitedly shook my hand, praising, as expected of a Hawkeye, truly living up to the reputation. I humbly replied, "This is nothing. Let's go take another look at the surveillance footage." Alan excitedly turned on the video, projecting it onto the large screen, staring at me expectantly. I asked everyone, think carefully again. Among the 3 people who had contact with Jack, which one is the most suspicious? Some said it was the auntie with the shopping basket, as a basket was an excellent tool for concealment, capable of hiding weapons. Some said it was the elementary school student who initially didn't have a seat because Jack gave his seat to him. He interacted with Jack, the most appearing harmless on the surface, but the most unlikely suspect is often the most likely one. Others said it was the elderly person with the cane, because when the bus started, he hadn't had time to sit down and almost fell. It was Jack who helped him up. I tapped the table lightly with my pen and said, "The location of Jack's injury is the front side of his left calf. We're looking for someone who had face contact with him, and this person must have been holding some tool capable of stabbing him in broad daylight without arousing suspicion. Although the bus was crowded, obstructing the view of the lower body, the elementary school student was always facing sideways towards Jack, carrying only a backpack with no other belongings. Moreover, spies are usually adults. Impersonating an elementary school student would be too difficult and likely to attract attention, so we can eliminate the student first. Next is the auntie with the shopping basket. Indeed, the basket is a good concealment tool, but she attracted a lot of attention as soon as she got on the bus. When her groceries fell on the ground, it wasn't just Jake, but several people around who helped pick them up. For a spy, having contact with too many people or attracting group attention during a mission is a big taboo. Therefore, we can basically rule out the grocery shopping auntie. Finally, let's look at this elderly person. He was wearing common winter attire, a scarf, a baseball cap, and glasses, and holding a cane. Very ordinary. But this is precisely the most suspicious part. He had the most accessories on him. Removing any one of them would be enough to make someone with face blindness struggle to recall him for a while. Now, look at the cane in his hand. It has a handle. At the moment, he almost fell. He was facing Jack, and Jack instinctively reached out to help him, but his expression showed a hint of pain. I suspect it was the cane that hit his light. If my guess is right, this cane is specially made. There's a spring-loaded button on the handle. With a little pressure, a poison needle would shoot out from the bottom of the cane, piercing the skin of the target. There's another detail. Both the elementary school student and the grocery shopping auntie were approached by Jack. Proactively, only this elderly person, Jack, had passive contact with him, or rather, he was forced into contact by the other party. The entire process was covert and natural. Once the elderly person got off the bus, Jack collapsed. For a spy, this is an undetectable way to shake off surveillance. This person is indeed an experienced senior spy, an ace spy at that. The entire process was flawless, textbook level. Alan quick find the clearest facial close-up of this elderly person, track his movements backward, using the surveillance footage, and find out his whereabouts. Captain Lewis decisively issued the order. My master once told me that when handling a case, we must let everyone know not only the what, but also the why. Only then can we maximize the success rate. In other words, no matter how capable you are, you must make your reasoning process clear to everyone, convincing every team member. Therefore, public analysis is essential. At this time, news came from a laboratory confirming that Jack had indeed been poisoned, and it was with a rare neurotoxin, its primary effect being sedation. In small doses, the victim would fall into a coma, as if in a deep sleep. Previously, because they hadn't found any wounds on Jack, they didn't consider poisoning at all. They conducted various tests, but found nothing, even suspecting hypnosis. It seems this spray didn't intend to kill Jack, perhaps just wanted to give the National Security Department a warning, otherwise the dosage wouldn't have been so low. If my guess is correct, the poison needle in his cane should be hollow, allowing him to adjust the injection dosage at will. If the dosage had been doubled, the consequences would have been unimaginable. It seems this person is extremely dangerous. Captain Lewis further test results for Jack are out. This toxin comes from an extremely rare venomous snake found in the Australian rainforest. Currently, there's no antivenom available domestically. We've contacted relevant institutions in Australia. We're using medication to control the spread of the toxin and attempting to use other antidotes to alleviate the poisoning symptoms. Agent Kyle from the toxicology lab reported to Captain Lewis, holding a report in his hand. Kyle, what kind of poison is this potent? Just a tiny needle prick can render a grown man unconscious. Alan asked curiously. Actually, this snake exists only in legends, even in Australia. It's said that no one who has seen it has survived. Thanks to Professor Zhang, a snake expert who studied in Australia, we were able to identify this snake venom. 20 years ago, he studied under Australia's top snake expert, Professor Stephen. He was fortunate enough to accompany Professor Stephen on an expedition to the Australian rainforest, where he encountered this snake once and extracted its venom. When he graduated, Professor Stephen gifted him a drop of the venom, asking him to bring it back to China for research. According to Professor Xing, this snake is called the bamboo viper, also known as the spider thread snake. Incredibly bizarre. It's entirely emerald green, only as thick as chopsticks, but its body length is at least twice that of an ordinary venomous snake. The most peculiar thing is that its body is segmented. When attacking prey, it falls from tree segment by segment, and the segments aren't completely detached, but connected by 3 extremely thin threads. At the time, Professor Stephen hired local indigenous guides to use long sticks to sever each falling segment of the snake's body. Eventually, the entire snake turned black and died. Agent Kyle explained, taking a sip of water from the water dispenser, finishing it in one gulp. That's creepy. What happened next? Alan pressed for more. After the snake died, the indigenous guide collapsed to the ground, drenched in sweat, partly from exhaustion, partly from fear. He told Professor Stephen that when encountering the snake, one must never panic, nor be curious, but wait for it to fall completely to the ground segment by segment before taking action. Otherwise, there would be danger to life. Because once it fully lands, it becomes as fast as lightning. Humans can't outrun it. Moreover, the snake likes to burrow into the 7 orifices of the human body, so the locals also call it the nostril snake. meaning it particularly likes to crawl into people's nostrils. The most terrifying thing is that this snake doesn't die inside the human body. It lays eggs inside, and then the young snakes crawl out from the same path the mother snake entered. Therefore, the safest way is to sever the connecting threads of its body as it falls to the ground segment by segment. As Agent Kyle recounted, the office fell silent, as if we were listening to a mythical tale, holding our breaths. Unheard of. After Captain Lewis finished listening, his expression turned even grimmer, realizing this meant there was currently no effective antidote. Alan said that Spy must have the antidote on him. As long as we catch him, Jack's poison can be cured. As soon as he finished speaking, he shook his head, knowing full well how difficult it was to catch that spy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have requested support from the 10th Division. Just then, the red phone on the desk suddenly rang. New intel: the target of this spy is likely Fiona, the senior engineer in charge of designing the new generation stealth aircraft. Given Jack's situation, higher-ups have ordered us to protect Fiona discreetly and prevent another accident, Captain Lewis said, with a grave expression. As soon as he finished speaking, Alan rubbed his hands together, saying this time with Marcus around, "As long as that guy dares to show his face, we'll take him down and get the antidote to save Jack." Swah. Investigation Team 1 in position. Investigation Team 2 in position. Cheated. Sacred. Including myself, there were over 10 members in the investigation team, distributed along Fiona's route, to and from work. As soon as Fiona's car left the house, we would be on high alert until she safely arrived at her company or back home. The enemy was in the dark, we were in the light. After a few days, everyone was mentally exhausted. I knew that Spy was waiting for this exact moment. When I was chosen as a Hawkeye candidate, my instructor once told me to become an outstanding Hawkeye, you must first become an exceptional spy. He let me sit in on all the courses of the Special Operations team and required me to pass all the assessments. He said, when executing a mission, you have to think from the perspective of your opponent. Forget your own identity, immerse yourself completely, and then step out and formulate a counter-strategy. Therefore, if I were that spy, I wouldn't act rashly at first, but rather make the National Security Department lower their guard, wait until they become complacent, and then seize the opportunity. So I reminded Alan to tell all the investigators to be on high alert, not to let their guard down, because the enemy would strike soon. As expected, early one morning, a week later, a suspicious woman entered my sight. I have to say, he truly was an outstanding spy. He disguised himself as a plain-looking housewife, holding a foldable umbrella, blending into the crowd of morning exercisers, inconspicuous like dust. Fiona had a habit of jogging in the morning, and the park square was one of her must-pass routes. The square was crowded with many aunties and middle-aged women dancing, and he was among them. Perhaps he didn't find a suitable opportunity, but I was certain he would act soon. My heart was filled with excitement, like seeing a big fish about to fall into my fishing net. However, I overlooked one fact: big fish never surrender easily. They are more cunning than humans. Their craftiness beyond imagination. Did follow the victims. To gain something, you must first give something. At that time, it never occurred to me that all of this was meticulously planned by that spy. He deliberately made me lower my guard, made me believe I had the upper hand. Years later, whenever I recalled his scheme, I can't help but shudder. The next day, he disguised himself as a male art enthusiast in his 20s, carrying a drawing board, twirling a pen in his hand, strolling leisurely in the park. You ask me how I recognized him, because his eyes and aura never changed. Unruffled calm and composed like ice water, exuding a chill or perhaps murderous intent. In this regard, my intuition has always been accurate. During college, I visited an infantry regiment. Before going, our reconnaissance instructor gave us an assignment: observe which soldiers are new recruits and which are veterans. Among the veterans, identify those who have killed and those who haven't. I got a perfect score that time. New recruits are green and nervous. Veterans are steady and experienced. Soldiers who haven't killed have gentle and peaceful eyes, while those who have killed have cold and chilling eyes. I remember at that time, a platoon leader handed me a pistol, teaching me how to disassemble and assemble it. When I finished and handed the pistol back to him, I asked him, "You've been on the battlefield. You've killed, haven't you?" He was stunned for a few seconds, then smiled and asked me back, "How did you know?" I said, "When you smile, only your mouth smiles. Your eyes never do." He told me that when he was on a peacekeeping mission in Africa, he once shot and killed over a dozen bandits. Since then, he could never truly smile from the heart anymore, as if something had been permanently taken away from him. At 7:05 a.m., the painter drove away from the park after Fiona finished her morning jog. He followed him all the way. 10 minutes later, his car turned into an alley at a street corner and stopped in the parking lot of an art gallery. But he didn't get out of the car. Instead, he sat inside, reading a book, his expression focused and calm. After about 10 minutes, I felt something was wrong. This was too strange. It's normal to browse through materials in the car, but no one would keep reading a book in the car. I asked Alan to disguise himself as a parking lot security guard and knock on his window, but he didn't react at all, still engrossed in his book. My heart skipped a beat. I immediately got out of the car and used a special master key to open the car door. However, when we saw what was inside the car, both Alan and I were stunned, a chill running down our spines. Damn it, where is he? Alan couldn't help but curse. The car was empty, but amazingly, as long as the car door was closed, the missing person would reappear. I gasped. He actually created a dynamic holographic image, projecting himself inside the car. Even after he left from the outside, it still looked like he was sitting in the car, and it was dynamic. How did he do that? Alan asked in astonishment. It's simple. He opened the car door while parking, rolled onto the ground, and then closed the door. For a professional spy, it only takes 2 seconds to complete, I explained. Unless it's an arrest operation, it's impossible to stay within arm's reach while following someone, and there are too many exploitable 2-second intervals. He had calculated everything. I wished I could find a hole to crawl into. I thought I had seen through his disguise, but I didn't expect that he had already seen through us. Not only did we not catch him, but we were played like a fiddle. What a disgrace. However, worse things were yet to come. At 7:40 a.m., an emergency alert came from Team 3. Something happened to Fiona. Right under our noses. She was knocked unconscious. Alan and I rushed to the scene as fast as we could. Alan grabbed the investigator from Team 3 and asked sharply, "What happened?" The young investigator's face flushed red, his eyes brimming with tears. It turned out that the spy used 3D printing technology to make a mask of Fiona's daughter's face, then wore the mask himself, disguised himself as Fiona's high school daughter, tricked Fiona into handing over her briefcase, and knocked her unconscious. Fiona's daughter usually lived at school, but this morning she suddenly came home, saying she needed to get some important books. At that time, no one knew what happened in the room. They only saw Fiona's daughter coming out with the bag in a hurry. They thought the little girl was running late. It wasn't until Fiona stumbled out, chasing after her, that they realized something was wrong and rushed to catch up, but it was too late. The perpetrator had long vanished without a trace. Captain Louise arrived 5 minutes earlier than us. His face was ashen, as if water could drip from it. I was the most embarrassed. If I hadn't boasted before, everyone wouldn't have been so careless. The spy was too good. There's always someone better. There's always a higher mountain. The ancients were right. Today Marcus had met my match, and was utterly defeated. No one knew how many confidential documents were in Fiona's briefcase, how great the loss was. At present, no one could give an answer. But one thing was certain. Fiona was also poisoned with the same snake venom as Jack, and the dosage was more than double that of Jack's. This spy wanted Fiona dead. Alan and I estimated that it would take 8 minutes to drive from the art gallery to Fiona's house, about 5 minutes to go upstairs and steal the documents, and it only took him less than 2 minutes to escape. He had done his homework beforehand, and had rehearsed every step, timing it down to the second. A sense of humiliation from being toyed with and crushed surged within me. The higher-ups quickly issued a reprimand for this incident and gave all of us demerits. The morale of the special operations team plummeted. The next day, my master came. It was said that he had vowed to complete the mission before coming. My master was the chief examiner when I interviewed for the Hawkeye position, and also the previous Hawkeye of the 10th Division, and the only person I truly admired. I remembered that during the interview, there was a young woman in another interview group. As soon as she finished her self-introduction, my master said she failed, and asked her to go back and wait for further notice. The woman was furious and questioned loudly, "Why? I haven't even answered any questions or taken any tests. This is unfair." My master only said one sentence, and the woman's face flushed red, her head hanging low. "Please take off your contact lenses." Just this one sentence. At that time, the other new recruits and I almost knelt down to my master on the spot. Before the test, I had interacted with that woman at close range, and I didn't even notice she was wearing contact lenses. Examiner, I'm just a little nearsighted. I meet all the other standards. Can you please make an exception? Becoming a Hawkeye is my dream, and it's also my father's dream. The woman pleaded with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, my master," interrupted her without hesitation. "Your dream has nothing to do with me. Hawkeye is a sacred profession, not a tool to fulfill personal dreams. You may think that being a little nearsighted doesn't matter, but in critical moments, it can become a fatal flaw. I'm saving your life, and also saving the country from unnecessary losses. Marcus, my master, patted my shoulder gently. Not a word of blame, but it spoke volumes. I'm sorry, master. I underestimated the enemy and embarrassed you. My eyes welled up, and I fought back the tears. He smiled and patted my shoulder again. Learn from your mistakes. Don't make the same mistake twice. Come on, let's analyze the situation together and come up with a plan. My master was usually very strict with us, almost harsh, but when we made mistakes, he never said a harsh word. Now that the spy had the upper hand, he should be fleeing the country as soon as possible. But strangely, 3 days had passed, and there was no abnormal information from any port. This meant that either he had left through other channels, or he didn't need to leave the country at all. In other words, he had another legal identity, just like you, Shinjing in the TV series, Lurk. As I said before, this situation was the most difficult to deal with. If we couldn't catch him this time, he would continue to endanger national security in the future like a malignant tumor. According to the spy's way of thinking, if they want to obtain intelligence, the fastest and most convenient way is to use the already planted sleeper agents or develop new offline contacts. Moreover, after this incident, I believe that this person was likely hiding within Fiona's network of relationships. Maybe in her workplace, maybe among her relatives and friends. Previously, I subjectively labeled him as a foreign spy, but now it seemed too arbitrary. Following this line of thought, we decided to split into 2 groups. One group, led by Captain Lewis, continued to closely monitor all ports. The other group, led by my master, focused on Fiona, investigating her work environment and network of relationships. We had to race against time. Otherwise, this person would disappear without a trace, like a ghost. After a day and night of investigation, 2 suspicious individuals entered our site: Zoe, an equipment maintenance technician at Fiona's workplace, and Lucy, a distant relative of Fiona's. Lucy grew up in Australia and returned to China just last year. She currently worked as a senior executive at a bank. Zoe had taken 2 days off before and after Fiona's incident. When we got their detailed information, Alan pointed at Zoe's photo and exclaimed, "Isn't this the person Marcus drew?" After the incident, I drew a portrait of the spy based on the makeup features I remembered. In the eyes of a Hawkeye, those accessories used for disguise were useless. No matter how you put on makeup, you couldn't escape my eyes. Previously, Captain Lewis painted several copies of the portrait and distributed them to all ports, using them to intercept the suspect. But for several days in a row, there was no news. Although no one said it out loud, everyone was somewhat skeptical of me, thinking that my drawing was not accurate and that I was not as good as they had imagined. To be honest, the failure of this operation and everyone's doubts dealt a heavy blow to my confidence. The once fearless young man was no longer as high-spirited and had lost some of his sharpness. So when I saw Zoe's photo, my nose suddenly felt sore, and I almost burst into tears. I was not a fake Hawkeye, and I was not useless. The person in the photo was the one Alan and I had followed. I could recognize him, even if he turned to ashes. My master said, "Although we have locked onto Zoe, we can't let go of Lucy. We still need to send someone to investigate her. Therefore, our group split into two again. One group went straight to Fiona's workplace, and the other group went to Lucy's residence to invite her back for tea. Just then we received another piece of good news. After much effort, the antivenom for the bamboo viper finally arrived in China from Australia and had been injected into Jack and Fiona. It was believed that they would wake up soon. This news greatly boosted everyone's morale. However, before we could reach Fiona's workplace, we received a call from the security department saying that Zoe was missing. He didn't show up for work this morning. His supervisor said he'd called in sick, but no one was in his dorm room. His wallet and ID were gone too. Not good, he was running. My master immediately notified Captain Lewis, asking them to closely monitor all ports and synchronize Zoe's photo to all groups. Considering that this person was carrying poisonous needles and was very dangerous, my master specifically told everyone not to engage in close combat with him. Soon, news came from Team 2. They had successfully invited Lucy back, although she was very uncooperative and even accused us of violating human rights. In contrast, Zoe was much more difficult to deal with. He was very good at disguise and might even have realistic 3D printed masks. Thinking this, I had a brainwave and immediately synchronized Fiona's daughter's photo to all ports, asking them to conduct a secret investigation. I bet he could customize another realistic 3D printed mask in a short period of time, and I bet he didn't have any other masks, only the one he had used before. 3D printing technology hasn't been around for long. Currently, 3D printing in China is mainly used in the commercial field. There are very strict national regulations on the printing of human face masks. Moreover, the most advanced 3D printed face masks in China have a recognition success rate of only 20 to 30. Zoe's 3D printed mask should be a high-end custom-made product from abroad, and its facial recognition success rate could very well reach 50 to 60, making it very expensive. Therefore, he would definitely be reluctant to discard such a realistic mask. When he found his photo appearing on all the wanted notices, he would definitely feel uneasy. No matter how he disguised himself, he wouldn't feel safe. At that time, what he wanted to do the most was to change his face. As expected, around 11:00 a.m., a tall and thin high school girl appeared at the airport, looking exactly like Fiona's daughter. I have to say that this person's acting skills were superb. If he were an actor, he would definitely win an Oscar. No matter what role he played, he was vivid and flawless, and he could even adjust his aura and eyes as needed. It was a real match of wits. This contest was truly thrilling and satisfying. Soon he fell into our trap. Several airport security guards pinned him to the ground with their batons. Captain Lewis rushed forward and ripped off his mask, revealing his true face. At that moment, thunderous applause erupted from the command center, and everyone hugged each other, tears of joy streaming down their faces. It was really not easy. Zoe, whose real name was Benjamin, was 30 years old. His mother was Chinese, and his father was Taiwanese. After his parents divorced, he followed his mother back to mainland China. He was recruited as a spy by the Taiwanese authorities at the age of 15 and received professional training. After graduating from university, he infiltrated a state, owned a military enterprise, and successfully stole multiple confidential documents which he passed on to the Taiwanese authorities. Fortunately, the encrypted data of the new generation stealth aircraft engine that he had stolen, this time, had not yet been cracked and transmitted out. After investigation, Lucy was not a spy, but in view of her bad attitude and insulting the national security personnel, we punished her with administrative detention for 10 days, according to law. Before Benjamin was transferred, he asked to see me, but Captain Lewis refused. It's better for Hawkeyes like me and my master to be known by as few people as possible, both in terms of appearance and identity. As night fell, the lights came on. I stood on the roof of the 10th Division building, overlooking the city. The streets were bustling with traffic. Crowds were bustling, people were hurrying along with smiles on their faces, and the whole city seemed peaceful and serene. The colorful neon lights dotted the night sky like a fairyland on earth. However, behind this peace and tranquility, there were countless hidden dangers. In order to guard this seemingly ordinary dusk, in order to protect the peace of thousands of families, how many people are fighting on the edge of life and death, silently giving their all. But no matter how great the cost, the belief in safeguarding national security and the peace of the people will always be our goal and lifelong pursuit. We have no regrets.